What if I told you that the ground beneath your backyard has been heating homes for free, every single winter, and someone made sure you never found out? Not a conspiracy theory, not a rumor. A documented government-published technique that disappeared from American building guides right around the time the gas industry started making serious money. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand something that most homeowners will never know. And it starts 4 feet below your feet. Before I get into it, if you are new here, welcome to Simple Secrets Daily. Hit that subscribe button right now and tap the bell. I put out videos like this every week, real practical knowledge that someone, somewhere, does not want you to have. Subscribe now so you never miss one. Okay, let us get into this. There is a man in Sugar Creek, Ohio. His name does not matter. What matters is what he did in 1986. He was 43 years old, and he dug a trench by hand 3 weekends in a row because he refused to rent a machine. He laid some pipe in that trench, connected it to his house, and waited. That January, his gas bill dropped from $96 to $31. He thought it was a mistake, a meter error, a fluke, so he tracked it. He tracked it for 3 more years. Then he added a second pipe in 1994 and tracked it for 30 more years after that. His January gas bill today, right now, is lower in actual dollars than it was in 1986. Before inflation, before rate increases, lower. The gas company did not do that. The contractor did not do that. The ground did that. And the ground beneath your yard is doing the exact same thing right now for free. Whether you use it or not, here is the physics, and I'm going to make it simple because the concept is not complicated. It has just been kept away from you. Soil has something scientists call thermal mass. It absorbs heat slowly and it releases heat slowly. The top few inches of your yard freeze in winter and bake in summer. But 4 feet down, the temperature barely moves. In the northern half of the United States, Ohio, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, everywhere heating bills hurt, the ground at 4 feet stays between 50 and 58 degrees Fahrenheit. Every month, every year, January, February, the worst of winter. The soil does not care. It holds 55 degrees like a battery that never dies and never fluctuates. Now, think about what that means for your heating bill. On a cold January morning, say the outside air is 8 degrees. Your furnace pulls that air in and has to heat it up to 70 degrees. That is a 62-degree gap. Every single BTU of energy it takes to close that gap costs you money. Every degree, every day, every winter. But what if you intercepted that air before it reached your furnace? What if you ran it through a pipe buried 4 feet underground first? That 8-degree air enters the pipe. The pipe is surrounded by 55-degree earth. Heat transfers from the warmer material to the cooler one, the same law that makes your coffee go cold and your ice cream melt. By the time that air travels the length of the pipe, it has absorbed roughly 47 degrees of free thermal energy from the ground. Your furnace is not closing a 62-degree gap anymore. This is not a theory. This has been measured in real buildings in real winters. The Courtright Centre for Conservation in Ontario, Canada, installed 9 earth tubes, each one 20 meters long, buried roughly 2 meters deep. They measured the temperatures through a full winter. Outside air coming in at negative 12 Celsius, air exiting the ground tubes at positive 8 Celsius. 20 degrees of passive thermal warming with 0 electricity and 0 combustion involved. Not once did the system underperform, but that is not even the most extreme example. There is a building in Baji, Minnesota. Baji sits at the same latitude as parts of Siberia. In January, temperatures there regularly drop to negative 29 Celsius. That is negative 20 Fahrenheit. The biohouse there uses an earth air tube system as its primary ventilation and preheating mechanism. Outside air enters at negative 29. It exits the earth tube system at negative 4. That is 25 degrees Celsius of passive thermal gain. 45 degrees Fahrenheit, with nothing running, nothing burning, nothing being paid for. Just the ground, doing what it has always done. And yet the average American household in the northern states spends between $900 and $200 every single year on gas heating. Over a 30-year mortgage, that is up to $36,000 paid to one industry. For a problem the earth beneath your yard was already solving for free every year you lived in that house. If that number makes you uncomfortable, good. Share this video right now. Someone in your circle needs to hear this today. Now I need to tell you about who knew this and what they did about it. Because there are 2 villains in this story, and this one is the more brazen of the 2. The American Gas Association. You probably know the name vaguely. You almost certainly pay them every single month without realizing it. Buried inside your monthly gas bill is a small line item that funds the AGA's operations and lobbying activities. 70 million Americans pay into this every month as a condition of gas service. You did not agree to it. You were not asked. It simply happens. In March of 2020, the American Gas Association held an internal planning meeting. The minutes from that meeting became public through investigative reporting. In those minutes, the AGA described heating alternatives. passive, natural alternatives like what I am describing right now, as an existential threat to natural gas use in buildings. Their response was not to compete. It was to bury. Since 2020, the AGA has pushed preemption legislation through more than 25 states. These laws prohibit local governments from encouraging or requiring passive heating alternatives through building codes. Cities that tried to incentivize these systems were blocked at the state level before their ordinances could even take effect. And when researchers ran the text of those state bills through plagiarism detection software, the results were striking. The same language, the same structure, the same provisions appearing in Utah, Texas, Arizona, Louisiana, within months of each other. When the Utah state representative who sponsored his state's version was asked where the legislation came from, he said, and this is from a published interview, "I didn't dream this up. I became aware of it from my local gas supplier, Dominion. A utility company wrote the law, a state representative introduced it. And 70 million households now have fewer options because of it. But here's the part most people miss. The International Residential Code, the document that governs what contractors will and will not install, has no category for passive geothermal preheating systems. No checkbox, no approval pathway. And when there is no approval pathway, a licensed contractor will not touch it because they cannot ensure work that has no code category. The system was not made illegal in most places. It was simply made invisible inside the paperwork. And the Earth does not care about paperwork. It keeps working whether the code acknowledges it or not. Drop a comment below right now and tell me, what is your average January gas bill? I want to see the number. Let people in the comments know what they are paying. Because this community is exactly the kind of place where that knowledge matters. Now let me tell you how old this knowledge actually is. In 1897, a German architect named Heinrich Scheler published a technical paper on what he called the Erd Canal, the Earth Channel. He documented the use of underground air preconditioning tunnels in farmhouses across the Rhine Valley. The physics he described are identical to what the Courtright Center measured 100 years later. He was not inventing something new. He was documenting something European farmers had been doing for at least 2 generations before him. And historians of agricultural architecture believe the technique traveled to the American colonies with German-speaking settlers in the early 1700s. The same settlers who eventually became the Pennsylvania Amish. The Amish in Holmes County, Ohio, and Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, have been using versions of this system since their great-grandparents built the first farmhouses in those counties. Some of those original clay pipe systems are still visible in the foundation walls of farmhouses that date to the early 1800s. The clay has crumbled in some cases, but the intake openings, the channel roots, the connection points, they are still there. The Amish did not preserve these systems out of nostalgia. They preserved them because they work and they are free. And here is what most people get wrong about the Amish. They do not reject technology on principle. What they evaluate is dependency, a system that requires a monthly payment, that can be shut off, that you do not own and cannot maintain yourself. That is what Amish community leaders have historically rejected. An earth tube requires no monthly payment. It cannot raise its rates. It needs no service contract. Once it is in the ground, it runs. In 20 years, it will still run. Your own government documented this. In 1947, the USDA published Farmers Bulletin number 1918, titled Ventilation of Farm Buildings. Inside that document is a section on underground air inlets. It describes the exact configuration, pipe diameter, burial depth, length requirements, recommended intake placement. Written in plain language, published for public use, available in the National Agricultural Library Archives. That was 78 years ago. And then, quietly, it disappeared from every major building guide written after 1960. The timeline of that disappearance lines up exactly with the expansion of natural gas infrastructure across the American Midwest in the late 1950s and 60s. Pipelines reached small towns. Gas furnaces became the standard. New building codes were written to accommodate gas infrastructure. And the underground air inlet, which required no utility connection and no ongoing payment, had no industry advocate. So it was simply left out. In 1979, a researcher named John Barnard, working through the New Mexico Solar Energy Institute under Carter-era federal funding, conducted a field study of 12 homes in the Rio Grande Valley that had installed what he called subterranean air tempering channels. His report, published in February 1980, documented something remarkable, something that passive house researchers confirmed 40 years later, but which nobody connected back to Barnard because his funding was eliminated in 1981, and the report sat in the New Mexico State University Library Archive for 4 decades. What Barnard found was this. Earth tubes perform measurably better in their second and third winters than in the first. The soil surrounding the pipe gradually adjusts as air moves through the system. By the third winter, the surrounding ground has reached a stable equilibrium with the pipe and performance plateaus at its maximum efficiency, between 8 and 12% better than first-year performance. The system does not degrade. It improves, then it holds. I found a reference to Barnard's report in a footnote of a 2019 Passive House technical paper. The original is publicly available through the university's digital archive. It is not hidden. It is simply never cited, never discussed, never referenced in any mainstream building guide. The funding that would have made it mainstream was cut 2 years after it was published, and it sat there, correct and ignored, for 40 years. Now let me tell you exactly what this looks like in practice, because this is where most videos hand you a concept and leave you with nothing useful. The most common installation for an existing home involves horizontal buried pipes laid at a depth of 4 to 6 feet. One end connects to a simple screened air intake cap, $12 at any hardware store. The other end connects to your home's existing cold air return. You are not replacing your furnace, you are changing the temperature of the air your furnace starts with. A rented walk-behind trencher can cut a 4-foot deep trench through an average suburban yard in about 2 hours. The pipe itself, 40 feet of 8-inch smooth bore PVC, costs between $60 and $90. An inline duct fan to keep air moving continuously costs $40 to $70 and uses about the same electricity as a light bulb. Total materials, under $300. For a home in a climate like Cleveland or Pittsburgh, where January temperatures average around 28 degrees Fahrenheit, a 40-foot earth tube brings incoming air to approximately 52 degrees before it enters your home. Your furnace closes a gap of 18 degrees to reach 70. Without the tube, it was closing a gap of 42 degrees. The load reduction is roughly 57%. There's one detail that most guides get wrong, and getting it wrong is the difference between a system that works for 30 years and one that creates a problem in the second winter. Condensation. When warm, moist air moves through a cool pipe, water vapor condenses on the pipe walls. In a poorly designed system, that condensate pools at low points and eventually becomes a mold issue. Critics of earth tube systems use this argument most often, and in poorly designed systems, they are right. But the solution is simple, and the Amish figured it out long before anyone wrote an academic paper about it. The pipe must slope continuously toward the outdoor intake. No flat sections, no low points where water can sit. 1 inch of drop per 10 feet of pipe is sufficient. Install a drain point at the lowest end so any condensate runs out rather than collecting inside. A drain trap at that point costs about $8. Research from the European Passive House Institute found zero measurable microbiological activity in properly drained earth tube systems after 5 years of continuous operation. The mold concern is real in a bad installation. In a correct one, it does not exist. The man in Sugar Creek, Ohio, is still living in the same house. Both of his earth tubes are still running, the one from 1986, one from 1994. His January gas bill is lower now than it was when Ronald Reagan was president. He did not do this with a contractor or a permit or a special tool. He did it with 3 weekends and a shovel, and the knowledge that the ground beneath his yard had always been ready to do the work. Every neighbor who ever asked him about it has heard the same answer. The ground does the work. That is what the gas industry spent 40 years and 25 state legislatures making sure you never thought to look for. The earth beneath your yard has been offering you free heat every winter for as long as you have owned your home. 4 feet down, 55 degrees, every January, every February. Every year you wrote a check that the ground was ready to eliminate. If this video gave you something real, and I believe it did, share it right now. Text it to someone who complains about their heating bill. Post it somewhere. Because the only reason this knowledge stayed buried as long as it did is that there was no one with a financial incentive to spread it. Now you are that person. Like this video, leave your January gas bill number in the comments and subscribe to Simple Secrets Daily if you are not already here. I put out one of these every week. The next one picks up exactly where this one leaves off. See you there.